Welcome back to the JavaScript Essential Training Series. I'm Mike King, your host. And in this tutorial, we're going to get into arrays part 2 in JavaScript. Not even going to get into a presentation. We're just going to jump right into the lab and do some more demonstrating of arrays and what we can do with arrays in JavaScript. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move into our training and development environment and do some demonstrations for arrays in part 2 of our arrays in JavaScript. I'm going to go ahead and drop out of the presentation. You'll notice I've got the template.html file opened. I've also got section 2, template.html file loaded inside my browser window. I'm going to go ahead and do a save as. Let's go ahead and save this as arrays_1.html. Again, we don't want to overwrite our existing files. And the first thing I want to do is let's go ahead and create a heading. So I'm going to go inside my container, create a nice little H3 heading as we've been doing in most of our exercises, arrays in JavaScript, part 2. So we can keep our files separate. I'm going to go ahead and close out that H3 heading. Let's go ahead and save that change and make sure we've got the correct file loaded inside of our browser window. And we do. Arrays in JavaScript part 2. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, I want to create an array using the array constructor because we didn't do that in the last demonstration. And there are a couple different ways that we can create arrays inside JavaScript. The array constructor is not the preferred method, but it is a method that a lot of people use, especially when they're first learning how to program, because it breaks the values down. It makes them a little easier to understand because they're on their own separate lines. So I'm going to go ahead and into my exercise file, so you don't have to watch me type this. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and bring this into my document. First thing obviously I need to do is create our script tags, because we cannot do anything in JavaScript inside HTML without having it included in script tags. Then I'm going to go inside those script tags and I'm going to paste. Let me go ahead and clean up the formatting on this a little bit, because I do want it to more accurately represent how it would be set up. And I've actually included the first value right after the opening parentheses. A lot of people do that. Some people don't. Some people actually put all the values on their own individual lines. I've actually included my first value on those lines. White space, again, it's ignored inside of JavaScript as in most programming languages. So just be aware that the white space is being ignored. So we've created this new array, and what I've done is I've created a value called cars, and that is equal to a new array, and then I open my parentheses, and then I put my values again inside quotation marks because these are string values, and I end each one with a comma except the last one. Notice that the Porsche does not end with a comma. So notice that we're using the constructor method to create the array. We talked about this in the presentation in part 1. We use parentheses instead of square braces during the construction, and also be aware that the last item does not need a comma. And in fact, if you include a comma on that last item in some browsers, you'll actually break it. The array won't be created. So now let's display our array to a paragraph just like we had done in the previous example so that you can actually see what we have. Again, I'm going to go into my text file and copy this so you don't have to watch me type it. I'm going to come right below my H3 heading and paste this in place. Oops, wrong answer. That's not what I want. I'm going to go ahead and cut that. That actually goes into my script file. That's where we're actually going to display this document.getElementById by ID cars, inner HTML cars. But what I've got to do in order to do that, I've got to go ahead and create that paragraph under my H3. So I'm going to set up my p tag. I'm going to give this an ID equal to cars. Then I'm going to close the paragraph and then close my opening tag and then close my paragraph tags. And that's just so I can actually display this inside my document. And that's what we're doing with the document.getElementById cars.innerHTML. I'm going to display the values that are inside my array cars inside that paragraph. Let's go ahead and save all those changes. Great time to pause if you want to go ahead and type all this in. If I go into the browser now, not only do I get my heading, but I also display all the cars that are put into that new array that we just created called cars inside that paragraph entry. So let's look at how we can access the individual elements of an array. We know that now we've got these elements in this array, and I've actually got 8 elements. I have 8 elements inside my array. And I want to access individual elements. I don't want to print out an entire list. I want to go after one individual element. Well, how can I do that? What we can do if we want to access an individual element, I'm just going to come down a couple lines. Keep in mind that the lines I'm putting in here are just for your purposes, so I can keep spacing so you can see what I'm doing. And again, white space is ignored. I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call it car1. And I want car1 to be equal to cars, and again, that's the name of the array, and inside square braces, I'm going to put 0 as the index that I'm looking for. If you remember back from the presentation, we talked about arrays being a 0-based index. So inside my arrays, forward would be 0. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And that's how they'd be numbered as they were put into the array based on the index numbers. So if I want to look at the first car, the first element that's inside that car's array, I'd create a variable. I'd give it a variable name. This could be any name I wanted, by the way. I just called it car1 just because I wanted to actually just use that as the variable name. And that's going to be equal to whatever's in index 0 of the car's array. And if I want to print that out, again, you've seen this one many times, so I'm going to use document.write. And then inside my parentheses, I'm just going to print out whatever's inside that variable. But first, let's do it this way. I'm going to go ahead and put in my quotation marks. I'm going to put in a break tag because I want a line break from my paragraph. Then I'm going to say the first value in the array. Then I'm going to put my colon, a space. I'm going to use that concatenation symbol we talked about in an earlier exercise. I'm going to say car1. So what I'm doing is I'm actually printing out the value that's inside the car1 variable, which went into my array and got me index 0. Let's save all those changes. Great time to pause if you need to type this in. Let's refresh our browser, and we know now that the first value in the array is forward. And it is, because our value 0 is actually forward. If I wanted to look at the fifth value in the array, again, very similar to what I've just done. Let's create a new variable. I'm just going to call this one variable car2. And I want car2 to be equal to, again, I'm going into the cars array, but I want the fifth value, which I know would be index number 4. And then I'm going to come down, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this so we don't have to type this all over again. Control C on the PC, Command C on the Mac. I'm going to paste it right below there, and I'm going to say I want you to be equal to car2 now. And this is actually the fifth value, not the first. So I'll change that, the fifth value in the array. And now that's going to be equal to my variable car2. Looking at the array, the fifth value should be, if that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it should be accurate. That should be my fifth value. It's going to be in index number 4. Let's go ahead and save the changes. Great time to pause if you need to type it in. Refresh my browser window, and now we know that the fifth value in the array is accurate, and that's correct. We already know that. So that is our fifth value in our array. So continuing down this path on how we can actually add and replace values in our array, what if I want to add values at the beginning of an array? During the last tutorial, we looked at how we can add values to the end of an array. There may be times when we want to add values at the beginning of an array. So the first thing I want to do, let's add a new paragraph. I'm going to come up to the top here. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, Control C in the PC, Command C in the Mac. So I want to add a new paragraph, and I want to make this cars1 as the ID, because what I want to do now is I want to add a bunch of values into my array at the very beginning of that array. And to do that, we use what's called the unshift method. That adds new items to the beginning of an array and returns a new length of the array. We haven't even looked at length since the last tutorial, but we'll do that later on in the exercise. But what I want to do now is I want to add values to the beginning of my array so you don't have to watch me type this. I'm going to go ahead and get this from a text file. I'm going to come down below where we actually created variable 2. And now I'm going to add values to the beginning. So I'm going to use cars, and that's the actual name of the array itself. So I'm saying cars.unshift. And unshift is a method inside JavaScript that adds values to the beginning of an array. And these are the values I want to add. I'm going to add Honda, comma, Lexus. So I want to add 2 more values to the beginning of this array. Then what I'm going to do is I want to go up and document.getElement by ID, and that's why we just created this new paragraph. And I'm going to display that new array right under the original array. So let's go ahead and save all those changes. Great time to pause if you need to type that in. Let's refresh our browser window. Now we got this brand new display, and we've got those 2 new values, Honda and Lexus, at the beginning of our array. You'll notice we originally started with Ford up here. Now we're starting with Honda and Lexus because we actually unshifted those values into the beginning of that array. And again, and we just demonstrated this in the previous exercise, we actually added values to the end of an array. I'm going to go ahead and do that again. So let's add a brand new paragraph or another paragraph. So I'm just copying that, Control C on the PC, Command C on the Mac. I'm going to paste Control V on the PC, Command V on the Mac. Add another new paragraph, cars 2. And now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add values to the end of my array. And again, I'm going to do this very similar to what we've done in the previous tutorial. I'm going to come down right below where we just did that unshift. And now we're going to do a cars.push method that actually pushes values into our array at the end. And this time I'm adding 3 values. I'm adding Chevy, Kia, and Mini. They're going to be added to the end of the array. And we created a new paragraph so we can display those values in the paragraph right below where we did the unshift. Now we're going to do the push. And again, push adds values to the end of an array. Go ahead and save all those changes. Great time to pause if you want to go ahead and type those in. I'm going to refresh my browser window, and now you'll notice we've gotten the Chevy, Kia, and Mini added to the end of our array. So our array is getting much bigger. We're starting to do a lot of things with it. What I want to do next, let's look at how we can look at length, and we've already done that once before, but also how we can sort arrays inside of JavaScript. One of the things that we'll do with arrays quite often, especially as they become large, is we actually need to sort them in order to display them correctly or to do something with them in our code. So a lot of times we'll actually sort our arrays. So let me show you how we actually do that. I'm going to go ahead and create another paragraph up at the top. So again, Control C on the PC, Command C on the Mac. To copy it, I'm just going to go ahead and paste it. Control V on the PC, Command V on the Mac. This is going to become my cars 3. And in this one, I'm just going to put actually in here. No, actually I'm not, because I've replaced all the inner HTML. Let's go ahead and save the change. Go ahead and type that in if you need to. So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom of my code, and actually to use the sort command inside of JavaScript, I actually just type the name of the array, and I say .sort because it's another method inside JavaScript. And then I just put in my parentheses and that with a semicolon. And now to display it, I actually can come underneath here, and again, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, Control C on the PC, Command C on the Mac, and right below there I'm going to paste, and now we're going to have cars3.innerHTML, and that's going to actually take that new cars array, because keep in mind that right here is where I'm sorting it. Now I'm going to display it in cars3, save all those changes, refresh my browser window, and now we can actually see that array sorted alphabetically inside of my paragraph tag. So we've actually sorted it alphabetically. If I wanted that to be reversed sort, I could actually do the same thing. Let's go ahead and create a new paragraph. Control C on the PC, Command C on the Mac, and then Control V on the PC, Command V on the Mac. Put in my 4th paragraph, or cars 4. Actually, it's going to be the 5th paragraph we have displayed. Save the change. Come on down, and I could actually do the same thing, but now it's going to be cars.reverse, and that with a semicolon. I'm going to go ahead and copy that document.getElementById, come right below my reverse sort, paste that in, and say cars 4 now is the ID we're actually going to put this into. Save that change, refresh my browser window, and now we should have that same array in a reverse sort inside of our document. So again, there's a lot of methods that are built into JavaScript and ways that we can work with these arrays. Many, many methods. There's a method that allows us to remove the last item of an array. It's called pop. It's the pop method. So you'll notice I've added a new paragraph, paragraph ID equals cars 5. Inside my paragraph. You may want to add that because I'm going to demonstrate how we actually go and remove the last item of our array. And do keep in mind that the last item removed is going to be based, a lot of it's going to be based on what we did with our sorts. Because I mean, the last item for our first example, Porsche, is not going to be the last item that we're looking at right now because of the sorts that we've done. Our last item is actually the Acura. So do keep that in mind. It's not the last, it's based on the last thing that we've performed on that array that will become the last item. For instance, when we did that original sort, the last item was Volvo. Now the actual last item is going to be accurate, as you'll see when we put the code in. So let's go ahead and put in the code that actually removes the last item from an array. I'm going to go ahead and copy this from a text document so you don't have to watch me type it. I'm going to come down right below that last sort, and I'm going to put in this comment, again, so that you'll have this comments inside your exercise files. And I've named the array cars, and the method I'm using is the .pop method, and it actually goes in and removes the last item from that array. Then I'm going in and printing out the values of the array inside that car5 paragraph that we set up. So let me go ahead and save all those changes. Great time for you to pause if you want to type that in. And now when we go in and look at our array, you'll notice that we've removed that last item. The accurate item is now removed from the array inside of our document. So let's go ahead and save all those changes. Now let me show you how we can actually get the value of that by using a variable. So now, very similar to what we've done before, I'm actually going to perform pretty much the same function, although I am going to come up, create a new paragraph. Again, because I want to display it again, because I'm going to actually remove another value. So I'm going to create paragraph ID with cars 6. Let's save that change. Good time to type it in if you need to. I am going to come down to where we did the cars pop, and what I want to do now is I'm actually going to do something very similar to what we've done, but now I'm actually going to create a variable. And I'm going to say variable, I'm just going to call it removed. And that is going to be equal to cars.pop. Again, same method that we used in the previous example. But now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and say, I'm going to use my write element like we've done document.write before. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this so we don't have to type everything again. And I'm going to come down to where I've removed that. Say document.write break tag, and I'm going to say the value removed from the array and that is going to be equal to removed. But what I want to do, and I've got to make sure that's lowercase because remember we are case sensitive, I actually want to get the document.getElement by ID also. So I'm going to copy that, come right below it because I want to print out the value of the new arrays using that car6 paragraph that we just set up on top. We did set it up, correct? Yes, we did. Let's save all those changes. Great time to pause if you want to type it in, because now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to reprint the values of the array, but I'm also going to assign a value removed from the value that we actually removed from the array. And in this particular case, it should be BMW, because that's the last value in our array. So let's go ahead and save all the changes, refresh our browser window, and you'll notice now we've removed BMW, and it tells me the value we removed from the array is BMW. So there's a couple different ways that we can actually see that. I've been printing out the paragraphs so you can see what's going on in our arrays, and in this particular case I actually assigned that removed to a variable, and then we displayed the variable on our viewport inside our document window. So again, a lot of different things that we can do with these methods inside the arrays. I'm just trying to give you some examples of things that I do with them. As we move through this tutorial series, we're going to be working a lot with arrays. So you're going to get very, very comfortable with working with arrays inside JavaScript. All right, this one's getting a little long, so I'm going to do one more demonstration on one of the methods that we can use inside JavaScript, and then we're going to have to go into part 3. And it's not surprising. I mean, there's a lot of things going on with arrays, so this could be a 3 or 4 part series. Let's get back on track. Let's do the shift method. We looked at the unshift method earlier on how we can unshift things. Well, shifting is equivalent to popping, but instead of actually working on the last item in the array, it actually works on the first item in the array. So let me show you what I mean. I'm actually going to go up here. Let's create another one of these nice little paragraphs that we've been doing. I'm going to Control C on the PC, Command C on the Mac to copy that. This is going to be cars 7. Let's go ahead and save that change. Good time to type that in if you need to. I'm going to go down to the very bottom because what I want to do now is I'm actually going to go in and do a shift. So we're going to say cars.shift. And again, open and close my parentheses. And let's go ahead and assign this to a variable like we had done before. So I'm going to say variable, and that's going to be, let's say rem1. So let's remove 1, because remember now we're moving from the front of the array instead of the rear I'm going to go ahead and copy that document.getElement by ID because we're actually going to go in and display that. I'm going to come down here and paste that. That's going to be cars7.innerHTML. And again, it's going to be working with that cars array. And I'm going to do the same thing here with the document.write. I'm going to copy that, come down at the bottom and paste it. Document.write break the value removed from the front of the array. And that's going to be rem1. I want to save that change. So this is a good time to pause if you want to go ahead and type this in. And keep in mind now that shift, pop removed from the rear of the array, from the end of the array, shift removes from the beginning. So we're actually going to remove the very first item. And if you look at our array right now, Volvo is the first item we're removing because we're still looking at that reverse sort. So that should be what occurs when we actually run this line of code. Let's go ahead and save all those changes. Refresh our browser window. And now you'll notice that Volvo's been removed. The value removed from the front of the array is Volvo. It's actually been removed from that array. So now you know how to actually, and we actually have to put a T there, save the changes. So now you actually know how we can remove items from the beginning of the array, from the end of the array. Still some things I want to do before we actually close out the array tutorials, because there's some ways that we can change elements in an array. We can work with elements. We can delete elements. And we'll do those next. But let's go into part 3 because this one's getting a little bit long. So I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial on arrays, part 3 in JavaScript.